Hi, my name's Jamie Lee, and welcome back to my channel, Go Happy Yourself. And I don't know where this video is going to go today. There's so many things going on in my head. So this could be 5 minutes, it could be 3 hours. So I suggest grab a cup of whatever and let's get into it. And what I want to title this video today is let's talk about sparkle and not letting anybody dull your sparkle. So I'm thinking back to when I was in high school. For like about 5 minutes, I wanted to be, first I wanted to be a doctor, and then for like maybe 7 minutes, I wanted to be a lawyer. But then my sister graduated and she went off to work in the city. We lived in Brooklyn and she went to work in Manhattan, and she was a secretary. And from that moment on, I always want to be just like my sister. And so that was all I wanted to be. I wanted to be a secretary. I wanted to wear pretty clothes and heels and go out with my steno pad and work in the city and be a secretary. And so I started down that path. And this was my problem in school. So I was an excellent student. And when I would, take my stenography classes, or the typing classes, I would be phenomenal. However, whenever they did the 5-minute timed typing test, I would screw it up all the time. I could type for 7 hours straight, but those 5 minutes, I'm gonna mess it up every single time. So when it was time for me to go out and get a job, there were no computers then. Everything was on a typewriter. So I don't even think they were electric typewriters at that time. They were manual typewriters. Bing, bing. And they wanted you to type, I don't know, like 60, 70, 80, 90 words a minute. And I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. But like I said in my previous video, everything happens for a reason, okay? And so I did not get to go down the secretarial route, so to speak, right from the get-go. The other thing that happened is that I was blessed to have a father with an incredible work ethic. He did not care, and he always said this about schoolwork: I don't care if you get 100, I don't care if you get a 20. All I want to know is that you did your best. And if you did your very best and all you got was a 20 on that biology test, then that was okay with him. And work ethic, like I think I could count, except for the time he got injured, I think I could count on one hand and have several fingers left over the amount of times he called in sick to work. And that was over his entire career. Okay. So I absolutely got that from him, and I could not thank him enough for that. So I've had an incredible work ethic, and just the personal philosophy of just do your best every task. Don't half-ass it. Don't phone it in. Do your best. So I've always done that, and it's always served me well. And so I want to say, I had a job right out of school, and it was, whatever. I was getting married, and I moved away. Well, not away. I was still in New York. I moved from Brooklyn to Queens. But I left my job because they wanted to transfer me. I worked for a finance company, and they wanted to transfer me to a really bad section of Queens, and so I quit. And then my marriage ended, and I moved back to Brooklyn, and I was staying with my sister for a while, and I got a job working on Wall Street. And it wasn't in a secretarial role, it wasn't in a typist role, it was in a a back office clerk role where I learned how to do dividend payments. And that was the start of something amazing. And so I went on and I followed my dividend path, getting into, I'm not going to go into the whole big long story, but when you're in the dividend world, there's cash dividends and there's stock dividends. And stock dividends was more elite because the stakes were higher. You know, if you owed a dividend on 100 shares of, stock in a cash dividend, it could be $1. But if you owed a dividend in 100 shares of a stock dividend, it's not cash, it's the value of the stock. So if it's 10 shares of stock, it could be $500. So the stakes were higher, so the stock dividend area was more elite. And I went into stock dividends, and I was literally, during the 80s, known as the stock dividend queen on Wall Street. And I was heavily sought after and recruited by all the big houses. And I loved it. I can still remember the days of working in stock dividends, and I loved them, and I accomplished a lot of things. And I moved on from there, and I really, what I was longing for when I moved on from there was to be a secretary. That's what I wanted to be. Even though I had this 9-year career as this amazing stock dividend person, I still had this need inside of me that I wanted to be a secretary. And so I left that. Now let me just backtrack. So in the company that I was in where I did the stock dividends, they had a process every year. So I started with them in January, and at the end of the year, what they do is the department was about 50 people, made up of stock dividend people, which there were only 6 of us. A bulk of it was cash dividends, and the remainder was bond interest. And they kept all of those people, and they would rank them as in ability, okay? And they would use that when they went into the performance appraisal process and the raise and, the compensation piece of it. And so I started in January, so I was not for that year, but for the remainder of my time in that company, every single year, I was rated as the #1 employee. And my biggest accomplishment in that company was my boss and I had gotten stock dividends down to a $0 receivable. And so then they moved us both out to go and work in different areas and help those people out in dividends. I think I went to cash dividends, and I believe he went to bond interest. And they left this 0 receivable department to somebody else who, in a very, very, very short period of time, accumulated a 25 million plus, I think it was $26 million in receivables in stock dividends alone. And that was a huge problem. And so they went back to my former boss, and they said to him, listen, we need you to come back and clean this up. And we are prepared to give you any and all resources that you need to get this job done. So he could have had anything. But what he said to them was, all I need is Jamie. And we did it, and we cleaned it up and got it back down to a 0. So that was an amazing accomplishment. And but when I left there, I took a massive pay cut because I wanted to be an executive assistant. I wanted to be a secretary. At that time, that's what they were calling them. And so I did that. In my subsequent roles, I would start a job every time as a secretary. And always, always, always within the first year, if not way, way sooner, I was always promoted out of the secretarial position and put into low entry level management position or something, because my skills were above what they were looking for as a secretary. And I did it. I kept doing it. But then I would always feel like, okay, this is not what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be a secretary. And so I would move on until I could do that. So then the profession seemed to evolve, and it wasn't just secretarial. You weren't just taking dictation and sending letters and, typing, whatever. You were actually doing things. It evolved into an executive assistant position, which seemed like just right up my alley. And so I would do that. And again, there I am, and I started as an executive assistant, assisting two vice presidents in an investment banking firm in Manhattan. And I actually took that job as a temp. And the first day I was there as a temp, and the very next day when I went in there as a temp, they're like, yeah, we want to hire you. And so I worked for those two guys, I want to say about 3 months. And then I was asked by the the vice president in charge of training, to go work for her. And I became like the global training coordinator, and roles of increasing responsibility. So I went on, I kept growing that. And, I was eventually the executive assistant to the CEO. And it's just a job that I love to do, because I get to do what I do, which is part of me, which is taking care of people. And, but I also get to do a lot of things, and one particular job I had, it was just amazing, the amount of things that I got to do. When I started with this one CEO, it was just he and I in executive suites that he had rented for he and I. He had moved his headquarters from another state to where he was living, and we hadn't set anything up. And we didn't know if we were going to set anything up, or if it would just remain he and I. He traveled 3 weeks out of every month. And so there was a lot of, stuff to do to get him on the road, which was all me. I traveled with him a lot, mostly in the US. If he went international, he needed boots on the ground here. But there, he entrusted me with everything. When he was in the air and not reachable, I was the person, like I was the one running the scenes for him. And so I was very confident in everything that I did. And I knew what I was doing, and I was confident, and I felt very, very good about myself. Okay. And then I owned my own business. Okay. So I opened my own business where I was doing what I do. I was a personal executive assistant for entrepreneurs. And I started my business when we had the recession in 2008 and everybody was out of work. I started a business. And from the second I started my business, I had work. And what I did was I provided this level of assistance that a CEO would have to people that were running a business out of their home or had just started a business. And in 2008, when a lot of people were laid off, that's what they did. They started businesses. And, when you are starting a business, you have to do everything, but you're only one person. And so you can't go out and sell your product if, you need these meetings set up, or if you need your expenses paid or whatever. So you need help, but you can't hire anybody because you just don't have that kind of capital and resources behind you. So to hire somebody that you pay by the hour is just, win-win for everybody. So from the second I put my business out there, I was working, and I was working like 18 hours a day. And it was great. And then I had to shut down my business because it was so highly personalized that I couldn't do it I couldn't do it remotely, okay? Not with anything that would make me feel good, any kind of surety that I could perform for these folks, okay? Because everything was highly personalized, whatever they needed to do. If it meant picking up their dog at the groomer, or picking up their dry cleaning, or taking their kids to religion classes, or, soccer practice, that's what I did while they ran their business. Okay, so I couldn't do that from 3,000 miles away. So I moved out to California and I got a job, luckily, the minute I landed there, but it was working for the Navy as a civilian, but as a civilian contractor. And if you've ever worked for the government, they are very, very particular. And you have a statement of work, and that is what you're allowed to do. And it's different from a civilian government employee than it is for a contractor. Contractors are severely limited to what you can do. But me, I'm like, oh, the picture fell down. Give me a hammer. I'll hang it back up, right? You can't do that. I'm not allowed to do that. I was not even allowed, okay? There was somebody coming to see the captain, and he was at the gate, and they wouldn't let his vehicle in. I was not even allowed to get in my car and go to the gate and pick him up. And even though I'm sitting there doing nothing, it was not in my statement of work. I couldn't do it. That was very frustrating. It was very, very frustrating. And so it was a long process, but it started there, that my sparkle was beginning to dull because I wasn't allowed to be who I was. And I had to fit in this mold that somebody else had created for me. And then I left there and I moved back to North Carolina, and I took a job with another company. And I was an executive assistant, and it was a high-level executive assistant role. But it was from that point on that I started using a different word. So I do remember in doing my resume, okay, this was something else very notable. In putting together my resume where you list your accomplishments, I listed all my accomplishments, some of them, okay, not even all of them. And my recruiter said to me, you have to change this because nobody's going to believe you did all of this. And so from my resume, I had to dull my sparkle because I did do all of that and more, okay? And, but they're like, no, they're not going to hire you because nobody's going to believe that you actually did all that stuff. So I dulled my sparkle to get a job. And from that period of time, which is very sad to me now when I think about it, when people say, what do you do? My last response, would have been, I'm an executive assistant. But what I found myself saying up until even 3 weeks ago, maybe, was, I'm just an admin. And let's just clear this up right now. I'm not just anything. I'm freaking amazing, okay? And so it wasn't until about 3 weeks ago that I realized what I was doing. And I had let this company dull my sparkle. Like I had let them tell me who I was going to be rather than just showing them who I am. Okay. And so I fit into their mold and I did it very well. I mean, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna not do a good job. I did my job amazingly well. And I moved on to another job and I'm doing that job amazingly well. But I know there's more I could do, right? And so, the purpose of this video is you shine and you have a sparkle, and don't let anybody dull that sparkle. Whether it's your job trying to fit you into a certain mold, where you're going to do this. Listen, if that's what it is, and it's like maybe you are in a company where this is your job description and this is what you're going to do, you do that. You do that to the 100% most excellent, whatever I can say. You just do it to your very best, okay? But if this is not what you want to do, you've got to move on and let what is inside of you come out and do that. You should never feel that you're just this, okay? Because whatever that is, it's something to somebody else, okay? So don't let anybody dull your sparkle. And sometimes it's the job, but sometimes it could be the people around you. And in one company that I worked for, the people that I worked with, the other admins, were happy to be admins, but they were happy to be admins because they were happy to have a job, okay? And they didn't really want to go the extra mile. And so like the whole energy around them was, like I spoke, especially in my last video, that we're all energy and we all vibrate at different levels, okay? And if I'm vibrating up here because of, my work ethic and, that I love to do this job, and somebody's vibrating down here, don't come down to that level. You stay here. Maybe by being around you, they'll come here. But if they don't you bring yourself down. And I think I was letting that happen. Like the vibration level of the people around me was less than what I was vibrating at the time. And I lowered my vibration to their level. So I would tell you, don't do that. Whatever you do it with pride. It's your job. It's all yours. And you're not just an admin. You're not just a gas attendant. You're not just a cashier. You're you. You're doing an amazing job. Don't let anybody dull your sparkle. And keep doing amazing things. And I hope this video makes sense, because there was so much in my heart that I wanted to bring out, and that I realized, like I was just reading a book about a high-powered executive assistant. Actually, it was a few high-powered executive assistants, and they gave scenarios, and these were executive assistants to top celebrities and business owners that if I told you the names of them, you would recognize immediately. And these were their assistants telling stories and giving situations. And when they would tell a story, I'm like, okay, well, I've either been in that same exact position, okay, and I did the exact same thing that she did, or this is, they say how they handle it. If I didn't have that particular example, I actually would have handled it that way. It just gave me a lot of confidence, and to say to myself, hey, you really are as good as you think you are, okay? Even if nobody else knows it, right? So just remember who you are. Even if nobody can see it yet, when you look in the mirror in the morning, because honestly, I didn't learn this until just recently, like since my birthday, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. When you look back at that person in the mirror, that's the most important person in your life. It's not your spouse. It's not your parents. It's not your kids. It's not your boss. When you look in the mirror, that's the most important person in your life. So you go out every day and make them proud. So that's my message for today. I love you. And until the next time, go happy yourself. Bye.